Can I ask a science question?
No. Okay. Next.
As I understand it, Mars doesn't have much of an atmosphere.
That's correct.
How can you get these gigantic dust storms, as they showed like in season 1, that are way up north at the opening of your book, or the movie version, without an atmosphere?
Okay, listen, you. Yeah. You can. Mars actually does have huge dust storms, mainly because the dust that it's kicking up is very, very fine. It's like talcum powder kind of level of fine, and so it does get these what are called tau events, which are so much dust is kicked up, the sunlight can't reach the surface. In fact, one of those is going on right now, so Curiosity is kind of in the dark a little bit, and Opportunity is might not survive, and so on. So. But the idea of a storm on Mars being able to come through like a hurricane on Earth, completely fictional. And I knew that when I was writing The Martian, but I didn't care. I wanted a cause, and it was a human versus nature story, and I wanted nature to get the first punch.
Yes.
So has the rovers impacted on this show? Like what the data they're learning, has that impacted on what?
Oh, I think definitely so. Yeah, there are just a number. I don't want to blow season 2. There are a number of developments
that are
already
did.
They told you everything. No, there are a number of developments that are. In fact, in season 2 in particular, it's fascinating how often they're able to cut to immediately breaking news, both political and a lot in terms of climate change, but also the discoveries, the river discoveries, and then go immediately seamlessly back into the drama.
Yeah, the Venusian invasion at the end.
Yeah, that
really,
was a mind-boggling.
I mean, that was really just sort of a teaser for season 3, but. Anyway. Yeah.
And then the part where Trump split apart and all the little men ran out.
No, that was on the news today. That wasn't. Yeah.
I knew it.
So, and you choose.
Sorry, you guys fight. Okay, go for it.
You chose the moon. Why not go further and choose Mars again?
I didn't want to seem like I was just beating a dead horse. I wanted to do something new and not just try to make something derivative of The Martian. And I wanted to, and I always end up starting with the science. And this time I said, I want a city on the moon. I don't know what's going to happen in it. I don't know who's going to be in it. I don't know what it's going to be like there, but I want a city on the moon. So I started with that, and I started working up the science and working out the details, and came up with a story from there.
Mm-hmm. But you actually think that's less likely than colonizing Mars at this point? City on the moon?
No, I think a city. I think it's more. You mean in the real world?
Yeah, in the real world.
Yeah,
back in the real world.
Back in the real world. I try to spend as little time here as possible. I do think that we will colonize the moon before we colonize Mars.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's my opinion, but I have not really anything to back it up. It's just closer and it's easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I actually was at New York Comic Con and I got a chance to hear Rosario Dawson read Artemis.
Oh, yeah.
And then
she's fantastic.
That big, beautiful moon that was
there.
It was amazing and great choice to do it too. She was awesome.
Yeah, I had no say in that, but I'm really glad it turned out that way.
So with all the conflict that's happening right here in our own very country, do you see opportunities in season 2 for making the show allegorical to what goes on?
This is right up your alley.
I think that there are opportunities, and I think that the scriptwriters and directors wisely resisted taking them. As soon as you establish an allegory, then you've tied yourself to a certain series of events in a way that's very hard then to actually explore what the series does, which is what happens when people get in this incredibly hostile environment. Do they behave differently than they've behaved over the past 1,000 years? And the answer is actually not really. And what happens when commercial interests and scientific interests run up against each other? What sorts of fanaticism on both sides come into play? So, I think by avoiding the allegory, they were able to really clearly investigate those problems.
And maybe reflect what's happening.
Yes, a reflection and not an allegory. Yeah.
I have a question that kind of riffs on what you were saying. So, given how corporate and scientific interests are clashing now on Earth, is there a way that space travel or the space industry can take its cues from the mistakes that business has made, or the successes, and vice versa? Or are we just doomed to repeat ourselves? And this is sort of based on.
We have slightly different opinions on this.
We do.
I mean, I think we are doomed. I think we'll keep. I think we'll keep repeating the same mistakes. They'll look different. Okay, are you guys parents? You know how you do something with the kid, and with the next kid, you're like, well, darn it, I'm not going to do that, and then you make a completely different set of mistakes. This is human nature. The problem with Mars colonization and the conflict between the scientific and the commercial enterprises is that, as many other people more scientifically minded than I have said, is the scientific community needs we need the commercial side. There's no way that we can afford to do pure research. But I think that's the case now. There are very few people, you can contradict me on this if you want, who are doing pure research now. They've got sponsorship from a drug company, they've got sponsorship from a university, and make no mistakes, universities are big business. Universities are not citadels of pure science. It's no different from what's going on now. It's going to look a little bit different, but we're going to have the same entanglements, we're going to have the same profit mongering at work, and we're going to have people compromising themselves without even knowing it. I mean, did you guys see how many of the psychiatrists who were on the recent government, they were on a task force for mental health, 10 of the 12 were in the pay of a drug company that made psychotropic drugs. Here we are. It hasn't changed, and I don't think it's going to change.
I agree with her on about 98% of that. The only difference is that I don't think it's as negative as she portrays it. I do think that the relentless pursuit of profit causes companies to sink huge amounts of money into the research to get these things forward. So if there was a way to turn a profit on going to Mars, then companies would be spending billions of dollars to figure out how to get to Mars cheaply,
right,
which would in turn enable people to get to Mars. And the best analogy I can come up with for that is the much maligned pharma industry, which is like, yeah, they're in it to make a buck, but their relentless pursuit of that dollar ends up creating a lot of medications for people. Not as efficiently as it would have been if it wasn't purely profit motive, but a hell of a lot better than it would have been if it was just purely government-funded research.
Well, and there's another side to this too, which is that, and I don't mean to be mean to scientists, I am not a scientist, but really the kind of dedicated, fanatical scientists who are going to go and live on Mars in order to make a discovery are not necessarily so engaged with people. That's not really what they do, okay? So if you have this pure science, you're not necessarily going to get things out of it that benefit people. That's not going to be their interest, it's not going to be their goal.
Right, because the question becomes, how is this going to benefit humankind?
Right.
And it's like, well, that's not what this is about.
That's not what this is about. That's not the point. Right. So, so there are points to having a commercial enterprise saying, yes, but can we sell it? Because that is there a market for it, which in its purest form is, do we need it?
So is there a role for government?
Still.
Sorry?
Is there a role for government? I think in the early stages, government's going to be critical to funding commercial space flight in the same way that government was critical to getting the commercial airline industry off the ground in the 30s. But these two have been waiting. They haven't. I wouldn't want to be on any team. I would not want to go at all. Nope. I write about brave people. I'm not one of them. I like pizza delivery. I like my house. It's awesome. I like my cats. I like living in a city where I can dial 911 and an ambulance can take me to a heart surgeon. Yeah,
these are good things. I have no burning desire to go to Mars either. But if I were going to go, I would definitely want to go on the first team. Because by the time you get to the second, you can see this in the history of every colony ever, the latecomers aren't as popular, and everybody coalesces into the two groups, the oldsters and the newcomers, and there's interpersonal drama. And if I were going somewhere that harsh, I'd want to do it without the interpersonal drama.
And the interpersonal drama would come when the second team came, though.
Yeah. Well, it would certainly ramp up.
So it sucks to be you.
I wouldn't want to be the new kids.
What are, in your opinion, three biggest issues that we can come when you try to occupy Mars?
Three biggest issues: getting there,
Okay.
surviving there, and ultimately becoming independent of Earth. There, not politically, I mean resource-wise, like being able to grow enough food that everybody there can eat, so that if something bad happens with the supply lines from Earth, the Mars colony will still be okay.
Well, and I would add to that figuring out pregnancy and childbirth, because you cannot have a colony that doesn't reproduce. And there's so many, it's not a secret that season 2 tackles this.
Well, for pregnancy, what you have to do is have sex.
Right. So,
that's-
there's
that's
sex,
how that works.
pregnancy. Well, you don't really.
You don't necessarily have to have sex.
Well, that's true. It is. Yeah, there are other ways.
I'm always wondering why people are talking about how hard it's going to be to have sex. People are going to have sex.
Yeah,
But
that's not
as
hard.
a mother, I will say the pregnancy and childbirth is a bigger nut to crack, so to speak. See how I did that?
What you did there, I see it.
Did the actors get to talk to you before their roles, took their roles? Or?
We did it completely independently.
Really?
Yeah.
So they
Yeah,
never-
and that's the case all across the board. The scripted people did their thing over here. The documentary crew did their thing over here. So, and you'll be really surprised how beautifully they work together. I think.
Yeah, and each of the nonfiction people we were
We were all isolated.
isolated.
Okay.
It's not like we all hung out together and did our interviews.
So was there any point you got to consult on the script or say, "Hey, this?
Nope.
So what do you think of where it's going?
Well, I liked season 1, but I haven't seen season 2 yet. She has seen season
I have
2.
seen season 2. I mean, and I think it's just incredibly well done. I think it's a tiny bit. I think it's a tiny bit optimistic about the nature of a scientific community. It's kind of an impossibly high-minded and pure scientific community, and I'm not sure that that's sort of psychologically realistic. But it is certainly it explores the complexities within both communities. It's not good scientists versus bad people raping the environment. It's much more complex than that, which I approve.
You didn't have, you weren't on SDCC, you were on the documentary side, but you didn't do any consulting.
No. No, I'm not sure any of the thinkers did. Really.
I think they had.
separate.
I think they maybe already had the screenplay done before they even interviewed us. I think they were
but
because they were asking questions that pertained to the screenplay.
Right.
So actually,
right. But
they had the broad strokes.
What they did do though was then take a lot of what we said and work that into the documentary side of things. So it very much becomes a here's what could happen, here's what is happening sort of interplay.
If you can comment on, one of the things that's great about the show is at least they strive to bring the science up to the fiction side of it and make both as strong as possible. Certainly that's what they're attempting to do. So if you can comment on that, because a lot of shows that will go to Mars kind of throw the science out the window.
Well, that's your area.
Well, I'm all about hard science fiction. I'm all about realistic science, so I'm thrilled. But I'm also not the mainstream audience. I'm a guy who loves to see the math get shown. And but I think it's great that they're doing it. It's a very interesting approach that I don't think anyone's ever done before, to kind of mix. There have been mockumentaries, there have been documentary-style fictionalizations, and there have been straight-up documentaries and straight-up fictionalizations, but I don't think I've ever seen a thing that actually goes back and forth between real science and then fiction based on it. And it's a really interesting approach. I bet you there will be imitators later. I think we'll see more of it.
Short of this, what's the best film or TV version of Mars that you've seen, not counting The Martian?
I don't get to do The Martian. Film or TV? There was that one, I want to say it was called maybe Mission to Mars. I don't remember if it was a TV show or made for TV. It was a movie? Okay, and that was the one where, I may have it wrong, but that's the one where their ship was basically had this artificial gravity with cables from the middle. Was that Mission Mars? Yeah. I thought that was a very realistic one.
That's really out of my wheelhouse. I can tell you what I think was the best movie about the Napoleonic Wars, if you want, but Mars.
What was it?
Master and Commander. Duh.
Oh. Really?
Oh yeah.
It's on the far side of the world.
Well, the books are better.
From a historical standpoint, can you manufacture a culture, or does it have to come out organically? Can you send people and enable them to stand and say these are the rules, this is the cultures that define people that
Yes.
No.
You won't get You're not going to necessarily get a healthy culture, but this is what the British did in India. Almost exactly. These groups of British officers and their wives and their children were sent into India to establish a British culture within India.
But there was already
Right.
things else. I'm talking about going to Mars.
Oh, going to Mars where there's not one. I'm sorry, it's noisy in here. I didn't hear the end of that.
Can you, to avoid that,
Right.
to to avoid any potential commercial scientific
You
classes?
know,
You go and say this is what
I think that there's a huge historical question mark with this, which is that we have never before seen humans try to establish a colony without an other to push back against. And a big part of how we define ourselves, whether it's as a nation or as a family or as a race, is because we are not the other thing. And we've never been in a situation where we don't have that other to push against. So I think either we'll do something that's evolutionarily new and different and has never happened before, or we will create an other within the group, which I tend to think is more likely, and we'll become other by pushing against, a portion of the group.
Okay.
You have to.
My finish on that would be that the idea of creating a culture from scratch and enforcing it was tried, the Cultural Revolution in China, and it did not go well. So.